Hello and welcome back to TST. If you're new to the channel, tap on the subscription button and press the notification bell so you can receive news and updates that you can rely on daily. Due to a temporary lockdown on pretty much everything for the emergency situation, we're currently unable to report news from our studio, and instead, we're reporting the channel remotely from home. Well, stay tuned and keep watching. Nicolle Wallace's interview of Joe Biden is the most embarrassing thing you'll see all week. So, what do you get when you cross a mediocre television host with a mediocre presidential candidate? You get Nicolle Wallace's MSNBC interview this week of former Vice President Joe Biden. Between Wallace's many shortcomings as a TV host, a time delay, some apparent technical difficulties, and Biden's penchant for rambling aimlessly on incoherent tangents, the entire 20-minute plus exchange is an unmitigated disaster. I could describe the moment when Wallace stares blankly at the camera, an ear-to-ear smile spread across her face, as Biden apologizes awkwardly for comparing President Trump to a yo-yo. I could also describe the moment when Wallace repeats Chinese Communist Party propaganda, parroting the allegation that it is racist to refer to the COVID-19 virus by its country of origin, as Biden dumbly nods along. I could also describe the moment when Biden apologizes after asking why Trump cannot just, quote-unquote, act like a president. But this is one of those cases where you really have to see it for yourself. Take a watch.
How are you doing? Where are you? And what is it like to be a candidate in the time of social distancing?
Well, I'm doing fine, thank you, Nicolle. A lot better than an awful lot of Americans are. I have been listening to the scientists. We've been social distancing. I'm in my home in Wilmington, Delaware, and I think being a candidate now is less about being a candidate and winning or losing an election than it is about getting this straight. We've been through something like this in the Obama-Biden administration. A pandemic, the coronavirus is another pandemic, but it's here at home. We dealt with it in Africa and kept it from coming here. But it's frustrating.
Mr. Vice President, Donald Trump making some news last night at the coronavirus briefings, and I want to get your take on the briefings just as a means of communicating with a very scared public. But first, I want to ask you what you make of his Easter Sunday target for reopening the government. Do you agree with that?
I would like to open the government tomorrow if we're possible. Let's be realistic. This curve is going up and up and up because we did not act when we should have acted to take the precautions needed that some of us called for as far back as January the 17th, when we knew the virus was on the rise worldwide. And it just seems to me bizarre. We have to focus on people's health. Listen to the scientists. Listen to Fauci. Listen to others. Listen to the woman you just had on, a former director, laying out social distancing. Keep it that way. Mm-hmm. Look, if you want to ruin the economy for a long, long, long time, let's go ahead and see this thing continue by having it burst out again. We haven't even flattened the curve out, Nicolle. I know you know all this. I apologize. But it's frustrating to hear this president speak. Mm. He should stop talking. Let the experts speak.
You know, there is some indication that his approval rating, after being way down when this crisis first burst into public view, has ticked up a little bit. What do you chalk that up to?
He's president of the United States of America, and I'd like to see him do better. I'd like to increase my approval rating of him. I really mean this. This is beyond politics. This is about the survival of lots of people in this country. This is not a political thing any longer. This is about how we spare this nation from a potential disaster. We can deal with the economy. When the way to deal with the economy is now, take care of those people who are in desperate need now so they don't lose their jobs, so they don't lose their paychecks, so they don't lose their homes, so they don't get kicked out of their apartments, so they can pay their student debts, et cetera. We can do that now. That's what the Congress is working on now. But for Lord's sake, listen to the medical health experts. Listen to them. Listen.
Can I ask ask you just to speak to the desperation. I think people feel like the things that the president's saying, and I misspoke earlier, he's talking about turning the economy back on. The government is very much on, and my governor, Governor Cuomo, I think is one of the heroes on the front lines, made a very passionate plea, but there was desperation in his call for respirators. What do you think of his leadership, and what do you think of the fact that he's not sure he has enough respirators for sick New Yorkers?
By the way, I think he's doing a hell of a job. I think he has been the lead horse here. I've talked to him frequently. He's a friend. I think he's doing a great job. I really mean it. I'm not being solicitous. I genuinely mean that. But in addition to that, you know, I called for a while ago for the implementation of what they call the Defense Production Act. That's an act where it gives the president, if he declares it and signs it, he or she declares it and signs it, the ability to go to corporate America and say, stop manufacturing what you're manufacturing now and manufacture this. And he signed it, but he said he wasn't going to implement it. You know, there was a great line that Lincoln had when General McClellan wasn't used in the Army. He said, he said, if you don't want to use the Army, can you lend it to me? Lincoln said that to his general. Yeah. Can you lend it? If he's not going to use it, lend it to somebody else, okay? Be president. Yeah. You say you're a wartime president. Act like that. We cannot waste any more time.
You know, I'm reading to my 8-year-old about Lincoln in the time of no school, but I want to ask you about that. I mean, one of your hallmarks not just as a politician running for president in this year, but as President Obama's vice president, was your ability to connect. How were you able to do that? How were you able to stay connected to people during this period of mandated social distancing?
Well, what I'm trying to do is become much more facile in being able to use social networking here. The fact is that I'm in the basement of my home. In the basement of my home.
Me too.
Actually, you know what I'm talking about. But for example, when I laid out in detail the plan that I thought we should be implementing a couple of days ago, and it didn't get that much coverage on national television, but they tell me over, I think, 3.5 million people watched it online. And so I'm learning how to deal with the vehicles that are available to get news out and communicate with people. Look, think about this. it sounds corny, I'm so proud to be an American right now. Look at the way the nation is responding. Look at the way ordinary people are reaching out. Look at how they're helping. Look at all these doctors and first responders. I was talking to some of the firefighters. These folks are risking their lives. They're not. And I talked about, you and I had the discussion a while ago, and I announced about saying we had to restore the soul of this country, stop appealing to prejudice and the like. Well, you know, none of these folks, none of these docs are out there saying, by the way, you're black, you're white, you're Chinese, you're this, you're that. They're just doing it. They're on the phone. My wife today was on the phone talking. We did the Biden Cancer Initiative after the cancer moonshot, and we put together a board of really significant people, including some Nobel laureates, but also providers. And she got a call from the person on our board saying, look, Jill, are you going to be able to? We got a lot of people who are cancer patients who are isolated, alone, they're frightened. Can we organize calling them on a regular basis? Can we get people to email them because they're having some psychological problems and like? And people are reaching out. They're moving. One other example, I got a call from a guy who's a great, great friend, used to work for me, a guy named Franny Persons and his wife. He has 3 beautiful young little daughters. I think the oldest one is now 11. And they got a call from their kindergarten teacher, one of them, saying, I'm going to be driving through the neighborhood, be in your driveway so I can wave and say hi to you and tell you how much I miss you. This woman's spending 3 hours riding through the neighborhoods to make sure to touch all the kids that she taught. These are things that are, incredible. We have never, never, never failed to respond to a crisis as a people. And I tell you what, I'm so darn proud. And those poor people who have lost, anyway, it's just... My heart goes out to them.
No. Listen, we're 2 people in our basements with nothing but time. Tell me what you would do if you were president. Obviously, in November, people will have to make a choice about who leads this country. What would you do that isn't being done?
Well, right now, if I were president now in November, if I'm elected, God willing, I may inherit a different circumstance. It depends on how this is handled. But
Absolutely.
I would have, way back in January 17th, I wrote a piece, or maybe it was the 15th, I wrote a piece for USA Today saying that, a pandemic's coming. We have to be prepared. We got to get better prepared. And we should be in a position where I would have, in fact, I called for it a while ago, I would enforce the Defense Production Act. I would be surging equipment and personnel. I would be moving in a direction where we had the United States military, which I called for several weeks ago, building hospitals like are finally happening. The National Guard is helping in New York with, at the Javits Center. We have this capacity, but most of all, I'd be protecting our docs, our nurses, and first responders, because if we lose them, we are in real trouble. We should be making those masks. We should be moving on those ventilators. We can do that. Why doesn't he just act like a president? That's a stupid way to say it.
Donald Trump was asked on...
Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, probably best I don't.
All right, let me ask you this. Donald Trump was asked at the coronavirus task force briefing Sunday night if he had reached out to any of his predecessors. And I know when I worked for George W. Bush, he reached out. One was real easy to reach out to, his dad, and former President Clinton after the tragic natural disaster of the tsunami. He said, no, I didn't reach out to President Obama or President Bush or any of the formers because there's nothing they can teach me. If he called you, what would you advise him to do?
I laid out a 14-point plan, and I meant when I said it, I said, Mr. President, this virus is not your fault, but these are my recommendations. Please take a look at them, use them. I would give them honest-to-God advice about what needs to be done, because we've been through something like this before. We have an idea what it takes. And by the way, you may remember, because the last administration, when we took office, we were dealing with a circumstance where there was a financial crisis and a collapse. And, we put together a $900 billion plan to help us get through it. And we did get through it. And the president put me in charge of it. And what I realized is you're required to deal with it every day, every minute. I talked to hundreds of governors, mayors, and local officials and congressmen and senators to say, this is how to use it. This is what we should do. What do you need? How to help? The federal government should be surging its capacity on a day-to-day, minute-to-minute basis to help these governors. And by the way, there's a lot of good Republican governors out there doing the same thing. You got guys like, DeWine in Ohio. You got a lot of people who are stepping up. But we have to, the federal government has to lead this.
Mr. Vice President, what do you say about the reporting in the New York Times, and it's been reported at a local level for as long as this virus has been something that people have been anxious about, and that's discrimination against Asian Americans? Donald Trump, I think, tried to put something back in the tube yesterday by saying he wouldn't tolerate discrimination, but that was after weeks and weeks and weeks of calling the coronavirus the Chinese virus.
Well, no matter how he got there, I'm glad he finally got there. It was long overdue for him to say that he's not going to put up with the xenophobia. It was strange coming from him, but I'm happy he did it. And the irony is, you may recall in the very beginning, when this all started, there were folks like me and others who were calling for him to make sure that he contact Xi, he get engaged and send people our experts to China to find out at the source what was happening. There was a federal employee that worked for the president in China to watch this. He either got fired or quit. I'm not sure how it happened. And at the time, he was out there praising how things were going. China was doing all these wonderful things and everything was going on, but we didn't know what was happening precisely. And now all of a sudden he is being tough on China. He's making sure, and now he's being soft on his xenophobia in the past. So I just can't figure the guy. It's like watching a yo-yo. shouldn't have said it that way. It's like watching.
It feels that way. I want to ask you. It's okay. I want to ask you what happens to the Democratic primary. Bernie Sanders is still in the race. You're ahead in the delegate count. What happens to the Democratic nominating contest?
Well, we'll see. I think looks like we'll still have a contest in Wisconsin. We are still able to run these contests by keeping the social distance and washing down machines and the like. But also, there's a great move toward voting by mail. And I think that's going to increase. And so we'll see. I mean, I was asked all along, was so-and-so get out of the race, should so-and? And as I said from the beginning, that's not for me to decide. I'm going to continue to make the case why I think I could be president and should be president now and make the case for it. But in the meantime, it's in a sense, it's kind of like putting all politics aside because we've got to deal with this crisis. So many people are frightened. So many people are concerned. So many people don't know what to believe when they turn on the television and hear those briefings. And it's really important that folks like you, and I'm not being solicitous, but a lot of you are the only rational voices out there getting the news to people in a way that is unvarnished, not sugarcoating anything. And the idea the president wants to, I'd like to get the economy going up tomorrow, but the idea that he's going to move in that direction, thinks that can be done by Easter, that would be a real resurrection if that could happen.
Tell me what you have to say to people who are anywhere on the spectrum, from scared to desperate to suddenly unemployed to home alone with children they have to teach while trying to do their jobs. What do you have to say to, I think, every American who is right now some degree of scared?
They are scared, but I've never been more proud to be an American. I mean that sincerely. Ordinary people doing extraordinary things for their community, for their neighbors, for people down the street, for everyone out there. They're scared, yet they're uniting. The American people have been through some really, really tough times. They have never, ever, ever, ever failed their country. And they deserve the straightforward truth, number one. And number two, they deserve economic assistance now, this instant, so that they can pay their mortgage, they can keep if they still have heat on in their homes, they can make sure that they're in a position that they can pay their bills, and students. I mean, this is look, we just went through, the people got hurt most in the economic recovery last time were the millennial generation. They inherited this incredible debt that they, in fact, had as a consequence of student loans. We should be giving $10,000 minimum in student loan debt for all these folks now who are up to their ears in trouble right now. We can do this. We can afford to do it. We can keep small businesses alive. We can keep them moving so that when we do flatten this curve and people are able to go back to work full time, we can pick up where we left off and go beyond. We have never come out of a crisis without coming out better than we went into it. And we'll do it this time as well. But my heart goes out, Nicolle, to those people who lost a son or a daughter or a husband or wife, a mom or dad. I mean, it's just... and the isolation, it really, but God, they're incredible. God, they're incredible.
They are. Joe Biden, just a guy in his basement talking to a gal in hers. Thank you for spending some time with us. We're very grateful.
Well, thank you.
When we go back.
Anytime, really, anytime at all. Thank you very much, Nicolle.
Thank you.
I'm really pleased to
open invitation. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for spending so much time.
Although it is difficult to pinpoint the worst moment in this train wreck of an interview, I feel comfortable saying that the low point comes at the very end, where Wallace sends Biden off as if she were a 14-year-old girl in the 1960s, and he were John, Paul, George, and Ringo all rolled into one. Joe Biden, the MSNBC host, said at the conclusion of the interview, "Just a guy in his basement talking to a gal in hers. Thank you for spending some time with us. We're very grateful." Share your thoughts and responses in the comments down below. If you've liked this report, let us know by tapping that like button down below, share the news among friends and family, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for more news and updates on TST. I'm David Ravine, and I'll see you in the next one. Till then, stay home, stay healthy, and stay safe.